Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh Sports Memories. I'm your host, Steve Ward, and I'm joined with my co host, Tim Hannon.
Hi, everybody.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing a Pittsburgh sports golden age. So when these great sports moments are happening, you don't think when they're happening, when you're in the moment, you don't think to look back and look at the bigger picture and see what was going on. And but it doesn't happen a lot. Sometimes you get like a one-off, but like every so often, there's just like this run of like events that seem to happen like within like a 10 to 15 year period, and it's just like kind of amazing because it just doesn't really happen that often. But if you can live through it, and it doesn't happen in every city either. It seems to happen like Pittsburgh, more than other cities Pittsburgh size. So on this episode, we'll look back at what I think is the golden age that just had happened. So join us on this fun trip down into a golden age here. So first off, I guess as usual, we got to define our terms here. So what defines a great sports age? And so how I defined it was championships in multiple sports within a couple of years, and you have to have legendary Hall of Fame players, and you have to have some legendary moments that defined that era. So any disagreements on any of those points there, Tim, or anything to add?
No, I think that's a good way to frame it.
Awesome. All right. Well, getting a little bit deeper into there. So I'm going to say this golden era. There was obviously one in the 70s that everybody knows about. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But when did this I'm saying it started in 2003, and the ending. I'll later in the podcast probably is debatable because it's still so fresh. Like I extended it to 2020, but maybe there might be an earlier year we could kind of cut it off. So I'm like, that I think 2003 though is pretty non-debatable. I think that's kind of when this sports era started. And and I think it starts with the drafting of Ben Roethlisberger in 2004. So when Ben got drafted, the Steelers, that really put the Steelers over the top. And it also, like, other teams were drafting and building a team, such like the Penguins. They actually drafted Marc-Andre Fleury the year before, 2003. And then Ben gets drafted in 2004. And then that same year, Malkin for the Penguins gets drafted second overall, even though he wouldn't get to play for the Penguins for a couple more years. Neil Walker was actually drafted by the Pirates in 2004, and Andrew McCutchen a year later was drafted by the Pirates in 2005. So, like, coming up to there, boy, that's like, what would you say? That's like four pretty major players in Pittsburgh sports for the next 10 to 15 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we haven't even gotten to probably the top guy that's getting drafted, and that would be Sidney Crosby. In 2005, he's drafted first overall. And that's like within 2 years. Boy, the Penguins had like 3 high draft picks within like 3 years. And boy, they really, they really maximized that. So after that, the Steelers. The Steelers go 15-1 in Ben's rookie year, and then they win the Super Bowl the season after. And also another like thing I kind of threw in here was like Pitt sports. Now, I mean, I'm sure people would argue like, oh, Penn State and West Virginia, they're not local teams. Okay, they're just not. They don't reside within Pittsburgh or the Pittsburgh area. I don't care how many Penn State fans live here. That's like saying the Pittsburgh Steelers are a hometown team in LA because there's more Steeler fans there than LA Charger fans. I'm going geographically. I'm not worried about, who has more fans. So the Penn State fans can go cry somewhere, I guess, in the corner and, have their, I don't know, what would it, Happy Valley Sports Memories. So they'll have to have their own podcast there. um, so Pitt basketball actually at the same time they had hired Ben Howland in 1999, but they really started to get rolling in like 2002, 2003, and they hired Jamie Dixon in 2003 and kept him all the way to 2016. So Pitt basketball goes on this like amazing run at the very same time. Like the Steelers are getting good and the Penguins are getting good. So it's kind of weird. Now, not to be left behind in the dust, although they probably kind of were, was Pitt football. They had Walt Harris in 2004. Unfortunately, we covered that in another podcast, Walt's last season there. And then they'd had Dave Onstadt for a couple of years, and they did okay. And but they finally went through a bunch of coaches before settling on Pat Narduzzi. And Pitt football is kind of like they have a moment, but not really as many moments as the other teams. So, and the main reason was that I think how many coaches from 2003 to 2020 did Pitt football go through?
They went through
Seven,
like
eight,
I think they went through six in just that 2 year span.
2 years.
Whenever,
Yeah.
in like 2011, 2012. So yeah, there was a lot.
Yeah, so that's probably contributing to they're not having as much success as maybe they should have. Their talent. Wait till I read off. So the championships of this 2003 to 2020 era, and I got 20. You can just kind of put asterisks or question marks. Maybe that's where it ends. Maybe it doesn't. But yeah, well, I'm sure me and Tim will have some fun debating that later. The Steelers wins have Super Bowls wins in 40, Super Bowl 40 and 43. The Penguins have Stanley Cups in 2008 and 2009 season, 2015, 2016 season, 2016, 2017 season. Pitt basketball, they have Big East regular season championships in 2002, 2003, 2004, and 2011. So I guess 2002 might still be a little bit before really I considered this golden age to really kick in. And then they have tournament champions. They win 2003 and 2008. They win the Big East tournament. Pitt football does have a Big East 2004. They're like co-champs. I think they were a three-way tie with Syracuse and Boston College, but they had some sort of edge, and they ended up going to the Fiesta Bowl that year. They have 2010. They're co-champs also, and 2021 they finally win their championship. So it just really, really shows like, even Pitt football had some, championships over that. I guess it is 17 years, but I mean, there's teams that haven't done anything in 17 years. So ask Cleveland. So, it just really shows the dominance of all the local teams. The AFC champions, the Steelers, were in the AFC championship 2004, 2005, 2008, 2010, and 2016. They had a Super Bowl 45 appearance, which they lost to Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Pitt basketball made the tournament like 2002 to 2011, and then 13, 14, and 16. That's like a crazy run of tournament success, like for a team not named like Duke or North Carolina or UCLA or, that's like blue blood stuff, like, and they made the Sweet 16 in 2003, 2004, 2007, 2009, and they made the Elite Eight in 2009. Some guy named Scotty Reynolds stopped them from going to the Final Four. Someday, like, we'll have to cover that. That's one of the more painful losses in Pittsburgh sports history.
You can do that one.
We'll save that for another part. Yeah, that's up there with Sid Slid, quite honestly. So Pitt football, what were they doing? Hey, it was the 2013 Little Caesars Pizza Bowl was one of their great moments. And I was just watching some of the highlights of this, and I like remember how we were saying like they went through like 8 coaches, Pitt football. Like Pitt football still had Aaron Donald, James Conner, and Tyler Boyd, and Tom Savage was the quarterback. They had a pretty good team, and they still went 6-6. And I just attribute that like when you have a coaching staff that turns over that much, it just destroys your program. Of course, in that that time frame. They went to the Sun Bowl and lost 3-0. They went to the Meineke Car Care Bowl and they got 10 wins that year. That was 2009. And they went to the 2004 Fiesta Bowl, which they lost to Alex Smith, and now the ex-coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Urban Meyer. Apparently, he likes to kick players or something. Maybe he was kicking Alex Smith. That's why Alex Smith played so well. Poor Alex Smith. Can't catch a break. Meanwhile, the Penguins, they went to the conference finals in 2013 and lost to the Bruins. And they were division champs like 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014. And, hey, even the Pirates decided they were going to have some good years. And that's how good, like, the mojo, the sports mojo in the city was so good. It even carried the Pirates out of their funk. They broke their, their losing streak. They had 2013, 2014, 2015 wild card games. And, of course, the 2013 Cueto wild card game is the best Pirate moment since the 79 World Series. Really, the Pirates haven't had much of anything, but I would put that up there with anything. So that's kind of the big moments that kind of happened throughout this era, I guess. I mean, it's so hard to pin down, when it started or ended, but this is all up for debate, I'm sure. Some of the big names that were involved in this, Ben Roethlisberger, and this is the man who started this, and Troy Polamalu, of course. James Harrison, he's a legend. Jerome Bettis. You have Alan Faneca, Hines Ward, Antonio Brown, T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, Le'Veon Bell, and of course, Antonio Holmes. I mean, all like just great big names that were, this is like kind of crazy, like how many great players just came through in this short amount of time. Like, I mean, if you go back to the 80s or even the 90s, I don't think there's much, that you can like compare. And it wasn't just one team. Sidney Crosby was the cornerstone of the Penguins. Then Malkin. You think Malkin's one of the more underrated NHL players? I
Well, yeah, I mean, he had the, he was kind of the second guy on a great team. So maybe a little Scottie Pippen kind of thing going on there with him. And he's been kind of up and down at times in his career, but yeah, I agree. He probably will. It'll be interesting to see what his legacy is, 10 years from now.
Yeah, I wonder. I think he'll make the NHL Hall of Fame, but did they have a top 100 play? They had a top 100 player list, and he didn't even make that. And I thought that was odd, to not even throw him in somewhere in the 80s or 90s. So, of course, Marc-Andre Fleury, he had that big save in Game 7. So that was a big moment for the Penguins, and he had a big save on Ovechkin too in that playoffs earlier, and that was in a Game 7 also. And everybody forgets about Jordan Staal. Jordan Staal was really good. I mean, I don't know if he's had quite the career impact since he left the Penguins, but boy, he was really good when he played for the Penguins. And of course, who could forget about the HBK? Yeah, HBK. Yeah. So Hagelin, Benino, Kessel line, which carried the Penguins to one of the smoothest playoff runs of all time. Chris Letang, he's kind of like Ben Roethlisberger. Ben, he'll scramble around there and be like, no, Ben, no. And then he'll throw a touchdown pass and be like, yay, Ben, yay. Chris Letang's kind of the same kind of, he's the same kind of player. He'll skate in front of his goal and you're like, oh my gosh, don't do that. You're going to get, and then it's he makes this fantastic move and skates down the whole ice and scores a goal. And yes, Chris, yes. Yeah. So it's good Chris Letang, bad Chris Letang. It's just, I don't know. It's very Ben Roethlisberger. It's you just kind of have to learn to live with it, I guess. He's going to run around and he's going to score some goals, but he's going to run around and probably give up a bad goal too. Normally the goals that he gets are, more than the goals that he gives up. So, hey, that's Chris Letang there for you. Another guy that probably is fading in people's memories is Matt Murray. I mean, he won us 2 cups. I can't complain. He's one of the more solid goaltenders. He really did. And another guy, Sergey Gonchar, like it was just like another forgotten guy I don't know if he's going to make the NHL Hall of Fame, but he's had a heck of a career. And like, I mean, he really didn't get a cup until he joined the Penguins later. So, but he was kind of like brought into like what mentor Malkin. That was kind of his role there.
Yeah, I don't know that they win that first cup in 2009 without Gonchar, honestly. I think you could make that argument easily.
Yeah. So the Pirates, some of their key players, Andrew McCutchen, who we mentioned, he ended up winning an MVP award, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Neil Walker had a great career. Garrett Cole, I mean, unbelievable. Russell Martin, I know he only played here for a couple of years, but he was a really good defensive catcher. And I always liked Chung Ho Gong, and I thought he was a really good player until Joe Madden had his player cheap shot him. I don't know. Yeah, that still bothers me because that guy, I think that totally ruined that guy's career, and nobody cares because he's like from Korea and he's not, No, baseball never cared about that until like a Mets player got hurt. It was like, oh no, now we got an issue. So, moving on to some of the big names of Pitt basketball. You have DeJuan Blair, who ended up to play for the Spurs and a couple other NBA teams. It was just unbelievably awesome for Pitt. Levance Fields, another great point guard. Sam Young. I think Sam Young spent quite a number of years in the NBA. And, of course, Brandon Knight, who is kind of like the legend who kind of started everything, like Pitt's like run of dominance there, the point guard. Now comes to like the really like depressing part, and maybe just because I really like Pitt football, but like, okay, here I'm going to read you a bunch of names, and you tell me how many of these people are going to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. Darrelle Revis, Larry Fitzgerald, Aaron Donald, Dion Lewis, Larod Stevens-Howling, LaShawn McCoy, Clint Sessions, James Conner, Quadri Allison, Kenny Pickett, Jabal Seard, and Jordan Whitehead. They all play for your Pitt Panthers at one point or another from 2003 to 2020. And some of these guys all played together. Like I said, in the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl, you literally had three. And I think I didn't have Tyler Boyd on there. And they have Tyler Boyd on there. I mean, I mean, obviously, like Clint Sessions and, Quadri Allison probably aren't going to be. But Jabal Sheard, was really good. And I think he won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. And he was really good when he was in Cleveland. Cleveland just stunk. I mean, Jordan Whitehead's won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay last year, didn't he? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, these guys are it's just the head-scratching, they put out as much talent as any of the big of Ohio State. I mean, I would compare this list of people to anybody Ohio State or Alabama or any of those teams have put out. It's just, I don't know, it just scratches your head why they haven't had more success. I guess it's kind of like they have one or two really good guys and then a bunch of not as good guys, whereas those programs probably have more of the, I think that's the difference between Pitt and Penn State. Is Penn State has better overall college players, where Pitt will have one or two really good players, and then the rest are kind of below average college. Maybe that's what holds Pitt football back. But
it's amazing the list of Pitt players, like you said, that there's that much talent in that short of a period of time, and they didn't have all that much to show for it. I was trying to think of guys you forgot. You already mentioned Tyler Boyd. I know nobody cares about punters, but Andy Lee is a 3 or 4 time first team All-Pro in the NFL, and I think he's playing for the Cardinals. I mean, he's holding for
the Cardinals. I was just watching the Cardinals game to watch James Conner the other day. It was that was just on the other day, and it's literally had it was great because Louis Riddick is a big Pitt. It's nice to have there aren't that many Pitt people out there, and Louis Riddick's a big Pitt guy. He was doing Monday Night Football, and James Conner kind of broke a tackle from Aaron Donald, and it was great. And then they showed the picture of them. They both played in the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl in 2013. It's how did Pitt go 6-6? And they had Tom Savage on that team. I was just literally, that's probably my next idea for a podcast is we're going to cover the 2013 Little Caesars Pizza Bowl. And it's what the heck? How did it just goes back to when you switch coaches that much, it's just, yeah, it's going to catch up with
That
you.
that
So,
list of players on all the teams and that list of that kind of the list you gave before of all the championships or all the deep playoff runs. I mean, that was it wasn't until you kind of read it off that I kind of remembered, man, this era was amazing. And you talked about the 70s. I know you're going to talk more about the 70s at the end. The what did we have in between, right? We had the 80s where like everybody stunk.
and there wasn't nothing. Yeah, not. I mean, the Pirates had that short little 2 or 3 window, and they did have Barry Bonds and Eddie Van Slyke
Yeah, that was
and Doug
more
Drabick.
that
Like,
was more in the 90s. I mean,
yeah,
the Pirates were like about to move. The
yeah.
Penguins were, the Penguins drafted Mario.
We're,
That was about all they had.
yeah, they had Mario and yeah, Robbie Brown, and that's about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Steelers had,
yeah.
Bubby Brister and Mark Malone at quarterback. The Pitt football had, I don't know, Ironhead Hayward. They had some good players, but they were mediocre. Pitt basketball was mediocre. Like there was nothing in the 80s at all. And then the 90s came, and you had the Pirates in the NLCS. You had the Penguins win 2 Stanley Cups. You had the Steelers got good under Bill Cowher. But the 90s and early 2000s, it was like all letdowns. It was Sid Slid.
Yeah.
It was David Volek for the Islanders scoring in overtime. It was the Neil O'Donnell throwing the interception in the Super Bowl. Like, everything that you had in that era, it like I don't know what was worse. Like the 80s, you didn't have anything. You like didn't even have the chance for championships. But then in the 90s and early 2000s, you had all these like close, Steelers lost 4 AFC championship games at home. You had all these close opportunities that never materialized. So I don't know which was more frustrating. And then like you said, when Ben gets drafted, that kind of time frame is when this all kicks off. And then all of a sudden, finally, like those of us who are fans that were maybe a little younger for the 70s, like the payoff finally happens. And man, was it fun.
It was a heck of a payoff. Yeah, we definitely hit the jackpot there. I mean, just to win. I mean, just to win one championship is like, normally, get you pretty, but we'll compare. We'll do some comparisons later, but I want to keep like, going with like, some more legendary moments. Like, what were the big moments of this era? And for the Steelers, once again, yeah, I'm going to go through the Steelers part. The three pro teams and the pit stuff. So the Steelers, they had the tackle by Ben in that Indy wild card game. Cancel the reservations. We got a game to finish up here. Yeah, the catch by Santonio Holmes. That's still, I don't know if that really has a nickname. What a tippy toe touchdown. I don't know. Troy Polamalu's interception in the AFC Championship game. Of course, the interception by James Harrison in Super Bowl 43, which kind of gets forgotten because of the late game heroics of some guy named Larry Fitzgerald. Hey, where did he go to college again? Yeah. Um, Ending New England's winning streak on Halloween. I know that's kind of like more of a minor moment, but I always thought that was big. Was that Ben's rookie? Yes, that was Ben's rookie
Yes.
season, the 15-1 year. Yeah. And of course, Ben's 15-1 rookie season, which is just amazing by the Steelers.
Steve, you could also throw the Antonio Brown catch to win the division to beat the Ravens. I
Oh yeah, yeah,
might have
yeah.
been on
I
Christmas
mean, I
Day.
just that team never just. Yeah, I remember that. That team just never like achieved anything, but they still were really good, and they never could get over the hump. Like I don't know what it was. They had the talent, but they never. I don't know if they didn't have the discipline. Like that's another great topic to talk about. Like why that team never won a championship. Like the
Yeah,
Brown, Bell, Ben, Boswell team. Like that. It really seems like there should have been a Super Bowl somewhere in their least appearance. And they were never able to get over the hump for whatever reason.
yeah. I mean, I still feel like that moment's such a great moment though because it was for the division. It beat the Ravens. It
Ravens,
was
yeah,
a last
yeah.
second touchdown, and you say what you want about Antonio Brown, but that play, he fought his way into the end zone. He literally fought like two guys pulling on him to get the ball over the goal line. So I always thought that was kind of a special moment um, in Steeler history.
He could be a stats guy at times, but at other times, like he would really show such heart. Like there was like times like late in the game, like give me the ball, I'm gonna make a catch, I'm gonna make a play. Like so, Antonio Brown's like so up and down. Like you know what I mean? Like if he just had a little bit more, I think, of a level head, he could have. Yeah, he's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame, and he's such a great wide receiver. But it's just like, $1 million talent, 10 cent head, and it's unfortunate because he really probably could have been like up there with Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. I mean, the guy just kind of like jobbed himself with those couple of years where he just was totally nuts.
I've said this, I think, on a previous podcast, but I'll say it again. If I had to list the top three guys I had the most fun watching ever, and not in any particular order necessarily, it'd be Mario Lemieux, Larry Fitzgerald, and Antonio Brown. And he was just so, like you said, he's the best receiver in Steeler history. And yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame because he could still be playing for us and he could still be really good. So, but like you said, kind of a topic for another episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on, the moments by the Penguins, the save in Game 7 by Fleury in 2009, the save in Ovechkin by Fleury. There were goals. I remember there was goals by Brian Rust against Tampa, and that was in a conference title, but that was two big goals by Brian Rust in a game they had to have against Tampa. And they have that goalie they have now, right? Because Ben Bishop had gotten hurt and they had to play. Was that Vasilevsky?
Yeah.
Is it Vasilevsky?
Yeah, Vasilevsky.
And he's really good. He's really good. He was the reason that series went 7 games. Also, of course, Chris Letang, that Game 6 against San Jose. That's a Stanley Cup winner, actually. The goal by Crosby in the Winter Classic shootout. And of course, Patrick Hornquist, he had a cup winner in Game 6 with under a minute left to play against Nashville. So those are all legendary Penguins moments. I'm probably missing a bunch in there, but we could go on and on with Penguins. They had so many great moments in those 3 Stanley Cup runs, and
the Hornquist goal is one of the more underrated ones. Well, one that I would put on there definitely is the Kunitz goal that won the conference finals in Game 7. Yeah,
that was another one where it was that Elliott, Brian. He just played out of his mind.
Yeah.
That was another one.
Yeah, that poor guy because he played his heart out for sure. Yeah, I feel like the Hornquist goal is a little bit underrated because like you said, that game was tied 0-0 and he scores in the final minutes to win the Stanley Cup. And I don't know, like that's a big deal, right? I just feel like that's not, if you're going to list all the great Penguins moments, that's not the first one that pops into your mind.
Was that Pekka Rinne? That was still Rinne, right? Was the goalie? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he kind of hits it off his back, and it's not like a pretty goal, like Letang's goal against San Jose, where like he skated all the way around the goal and like shot it in the opposite corner, and that's like a very Chris Letang kind of goal. Like once again, the good Chris, bad Chris, But so it would have been really bad if like he would have turned it over in the corner as a defenseman and been down. But Chris Letang doesn't do that; he's too talented. So, but there's some great Penguins memories there, and not to be, left behind. And since this era, just the magic in Pittsburgh, whatever the Pittsburgh sports magic was going on. The Pirates, they had their Cueto wild card game. McCutcheon did their MVP, and they broke their 20-year losing streak. So even though the Pirates didn't really win, I don't think even they didn't win a division, did they? No. But they did get they did have some other great moments. So good for them, I guess. Yay. Pitt basketball, my goodness, what a run. Winning the Big East tournament in 2003. Remember, and we've talked about this, Levance Fields hitting that shot to beat Duke in Madison Square Garden. Yeah. That was huge. That was really big. I don't remember if anybody remembers this except for me. Ronald Ramon hitting a last-second buzzer beater to beat WVU at Pete in 2008. That was like right after 13-9, and like it's like Pitt, West Virginia can't beat Pitt in anything, not even basketball. But that's a fun one. I remember when the year they beat Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament. That was with like Carl Krauser, and that's one of the better moments. That was just like, it ended up, Pitt was a higher seed and had to play Wisconsin, who should have been it ended up being like a Wisconsin home game because of where it was played. And that was just one of those games that like Pitt basketball was just they're really good, which is a shame. Pitt football, like we said, they had a lot of downs, but 13-9 happened, so that was definitely a big moment. 2016 Clemson, and that was the last Clemson loss that year before they won the national title. And I think that was their last home loss until 2021. So
Wow.
like they didn't lose for another 4 or 5 years after that. Of course, in 2016, they beat Penn State and kept them out of the national championship. So we have that going for us. Um, in 2017, I was at this game. They beat Miami when Miami was ranked number 2, because of course you don't want to be ranked number 2 and play Pitt. It's a dangerous proposition. 2018, that's another fun year, and I know, like, I think Pitt went like 7-5 or 6-6 that year, and they did end up going to the ACC championship game. That was just like they beat Virginia Tech with like this incredible Quadri Allison like run, like where he went for like 90 yards. And this guy, I remember the guy from Virginia Tech, Caleb Farley, and he's actually the NFL. He tried to tackle Allison, and Allison was like broke through the line. Like Pitt was at its own 3, and he's breaking through the line, and like you see, like Allison has a decision. He can go out of bounds after like a 40-yard gain, or like just run Caleb Farley over. And it's like, oh, run Caleb, and he just literally runs the guy over and goes for like another 40 yards for a touchdown. So it was that was always that was one of my favorite Pitt plays. And of course, in 2021, this just happened. Pitt finally wins their first ACC football championship, and I think that's their first conference championship in football outright of any kind, because they were independent for the longest time, and they only ever were co-Big East champions. So yay for Pitt! 100 years of football, it finally happened. And of course, Kenny Pickett finishing third in the Heisman voting, but good for Kenny sticking around. And another thing that happened was Larry Fitzgerald finished second in the Heisman voting in 2003. And like I was just looking at this, he finished ahead of Eli Manning, but behind Jason White. Like, who voted for Jason White over Eli Manning and Larry Fitzgerald? Oh, that's Ron Cook. I mean, like, okay, if you don't like Larry Fitzgerald, that's fine, and you want to make the argument he doesn't touch the ball every time. So you voted for like Jason White over Eli Manning? That's crazy. And it's just like it goes to show like what a joke the Heisman is. I mean, they have no credibility. I mean, this is the same people that gave Paul Hornung on a 6-6 Notre Dame team the Heisman over Jim Brown. So that award doesn't have any credibility. It hasn't had any for like 50 years now. So go figure. That's my fun little rant on the Heisman Trophy. Hope everybody enjoyed it. So how does Pittsburgh's golden era stand up against other cities? If you think about it, Pittsburgh really only has 3 pro sports teams, and they have 1 major local college. If for comparison, like Philadelphia, they have like a lot. They're a much bigger city with 1.5 million, and they have 4 pro sports teams. They have all 4 pro sports teams, but also they have like 5 or 6 major local colleges. So, their last championship was 2018 with Nick Foles and the Eagles, and that's the Eagles' first Super Bowl win. I mean, and the Flyers have you seen the Flyers win the Cup? That was 1975. And I think the Phillies won a World Series back, 2008 or
8,
something?
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really like even like bigger cities like Philadelphia haven't had success. And like just for comparison, I think Pittsburgh has a 302,000 is the last census as of 2020. So if you compare us to like, cities maybe, because Philadelphia is probably a much bigger city, not really an apples to apples. Like Cleveland is probably, and Cincinnati would be 2 very good cities to compare us to. Cleveland has 385,000, and they have 3 major pro teams, but they don't have a college team per se. I mean, I guess Ohio State. I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like a Penn State thing. They're not really located, but everybody's an Ohio State fan there. So I don't know. But even though, I mean, they've only had 1 championship in 2016, and it took like LeBron James, like miracle stuff to pull that out. So Here, here's a nice little video about Cleveland for you can kind of listen to this. It's entertaining.
Fun times in Cleveland again. Still Cleveland. Come on down to Cleveland town, everyone. Under construction since 1868. See our river that catches on fire. It's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS. We see the sun almost 3 times a year. This guy has at least 2 DUIs. The flats look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town. Don't slow down in East Cleveland or you'll die. Our economy's based on LeBron James. Buy a house for the price of a VCR. Our main export is crippling depression. We're so retarded that we think this is art. It could be worse though, at least we're not Detroit. We're not Detroit.
Well, hey everybody, go visit Cleveland, right? Yay!
Or Cleveland.
Well, they're not Detroit, Tim. They're not Detroit. So they got that going for them. But that's always just fun. And that was actually made by somebody in Cleveland. Good for them. It could be worse. You could be Detroit, or you could be Cincinnati. Cincinnati does have 2 major sports, like if you count like the MLS, like FC Cincinnati, and their last championship was in 1990 with the Reds World Series. So once again, no major colleges really in Cincinnati except for Ohio State, or I guess maybe Kentucky, right? Kentucky's kind of across the border there, so maybe there's a few Kentucky fans in Cincinnati.
As of the time of this recording, the University of Cincinnati is having a really good football season, so you got that going for them.
Yeah, they don't get the fan base that, like, they're kind of in the same situation Pitt's in, like where they're in like a pro town with like a major state university that has a bigger fan base probably in their town than the local team. So I guess that is their kind of, Cincinnati. But in Cincinnati, like, good for them. The University of Cincinnati's had a lot of success. I mean, they've had like a bunch of 10-win seasons. So we'll see. They got to play Alabama at some point here, right? Coming up next couple of weeks. So I guess we'll see what happens to them. So if you include all of Allegheny County, which sometimes people do, like Pittsburgh, that puts us up to like 2 million. So maybe Pittsburgh is bigger than we think or not, because just the way, however you tabulate it. I looked for like, comparisons with like the bigger cities, and Pittsburgh is overall with what do we have, 17 championships. So that puts us like right ahead of St. Louis, and actually Philadelphia does have 20 if you count up all the MLB, NBA, NHL, whatever, MLS, whatever you want. New York has the most at 61, and Boston has 40. So I mean, we're in Detroit. Hey, we're not Detroit has 22. So, haha, Cleveland. Detroit has way more championships than you. Cleveland, just for reference, has 13. So, which is, how does Detroit have 22? Like, because of the Red Wings and the basketball. And
yeah, I mean, again, if we're talking about eras, I mean, it's how many championships, even in Pittsburgh, there was a couple of those championships were won in eras where, very few people on this earth were alive. So, it's really about, what did you as a fan get to experience rooting for those teams in your area? And, sometimes it's not as many championships as in New York City, but if it's in a certain time frame, then you loved it. I mean, look at, I don't know if you're going to talk, Steve, at all about the city of Tampa, but look what they're experiencing right now. They've had 3 championships in the last, year, a little over a year. So, do they have as many as some of these other cities? No, but those fans will look fondly back on this time and say, oh my gosh, we were winning championships and we were having parades, at the same time. So I think sometimes that's more valuable than like total number of championships.
I think in a smaller town like Pittsburgh or Cleveland, or, like, it just means like a little bit more to people, because like New York, like, not everybody in New York's going to be like really into that sports. There's just so many people and so much to do. They probably, have other interests besides that. Whereas like when the Steelers are going to the Super Bowl or the Penguins are going for a Stanley Cup or whatever, like even when Pitt was in the championship game, it seemed like the whole city would seem to really get into it, So I doubt that happens as much in some of these other markets. They did have a pretty cool number of times winning multiple championships in one calendar year, and we've done it twice. No, New York, I guess, has done it 7 times, and LA's done it 3. And like you said, they have this only doing it once. So I guess that's, like you said, like the Super Bowl and then the 2 things. And so Tampa did 2021. Pittsburgh, we did in 2009. Boston did in 2004 with the Patriots and Red Sox. Oh, yeah, that's right. In the Los Angeles 2020 because they had Lakers and the Dodgers. So, and, when we're, you figure Pittsburgh and Tampa, wow, we're in there with like the big dogs. Like, because you figure Boston, LA, and New York, that's like major cities, They're just, and they have all these, they have more resources and, just bigger market. And, if you can stand, up with those guys, you're doing all right. So, how does this golden age compare with the other ones? Well, like you said, 2 Super Bowl champions, 3 Stanley Cups, Pitt basketball with 2 Big East titles and an elite. And it might be an outlier, but Pitt football with the ACC championship. Just for comparison, the 1970s golden age, which, I consider that starting with the drafting of Mean Joe Green, which I guess technically was 1969. And then I say it ended with the Super Bowl win in 1980. I would say, I have the Condors on there, but they won in 1968. So I don't know if we're really they were kind of like, another outlier kind of thing. But they had 4 Super Bowls, 2 World Series, and a Pitt football championships. The Penguins even made the playoffs a couple of times. And, definitely the 70s, they probably have a little bit of an edge over this just because, like, Pitt had an undefeated season in football. That doesn't happen that often. And, 4 Super Bowls and 2 World Series. Does that equal 2 Super Bowls and 3 Stanley Cups? That's 5 to 6. So it's a little, the 70s probably were a little bit more dominant in Pittsburgh sports than whatever this era was. I don't know, 2003s to 2020s. Like it has an extra 7 years on the 70s, which is a little more compact. So.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, Steve. It's a hard comparison, but I think one thing you could give the 70s an edge is you had a team with the Steelers that was literally one of the greatest dynasties of all time. And I don't know that you could say that about, the Penguins or the Steelers teams that won championships of this era. Like you can't, they're great teams. I don't know that you can put them in like the top 3 of all time dynasties, right? Although maybe you can make an argument for the Penguins winning back-to-back cups in the Cap era, which is not easy to do. But yeah, that's probably why you give the edge to the 70s because of those Steelers teams. And then, to have the Pirates win 2 World Series and Pitt go undefeated and win a national championship on top of it, it's hard to argue. But so I would give the edge to the 70s, but like, are we going to complain? I mean, we've been very blessed in this era.
Yeah. And now for the real, I guess this is how we're going to end it since, everything's got all good things that's come to the end. Father Time is undefeated unless you're Tom Brady, who is apparently some sort of vampire and will be living forever. Who knew avocado juice was the fountain of youth? I don't know. Maybe that's why I moved to Tampa. There wasn't Ponce de Leon looking for the fountain of youth down there. Maybe he found it. I don't know. So why do I think this golden age is over? Well, one of the reasons was when Jamie Dixon left Pitt basketball, he took all the competitive. He packed up his bag and was like, here, let me take all the winning and competitiveness with me on my way out the door. And at Pitt basketball, absolute garbage since 2016. They are just horrible. So they've kind of gone back to where they were before Ben Howland showed up in the 90s, which is very sad because it was a lot of fun to watch Pitt basketball be that good for that long. And it wasn't like a 1-year flash in the pan. That was 10 years of really, really good Pitt basketball. The Pirates, after 3 years of being competitive, they let everybody go. Let Andrew McCutcheon go, let Neil Walker go, and now they've gone back to 100-year losses every year and 5-year plans and fireworks night. And hey, Journey's coming to play after the game. Who wants to see them? And yeah, it's the Pirates have kind of gone back to what they always were for a long time. Crosby, he was hurt a lot this year, and I think he's in decline. He's 34 years old right now, and I gotta say he's probably on the back end of his career. And it's just, Marc-Andre Fleury isn't around anymore. Nothing against Tristan Jarry, but I don't see them winning a Stanley Cup with Tristan Jarry. But I could be wrong, and I'll be happy to eat crow, and you can play this over and over again and make fun of me. But I don't know. I don't see it with Tristan Jarry, but hey, whatever. Of course, Marc-Andre Fleury has been traded, and Malkin's been hurt for a long time. I think I saw somewhere like he's missed, like if you total up all the time he's missed like 3 seasons total now. So Malkin has really been. Now the rumors going around that Ben Roethlisberger, he's going to be retiring at the end of this season, and I think that probably makes sense to me. He'll probably be gone. So the guy who kind of started it, it'll be a nice little like bookend to end it. Pitt football, I mean, is it just an exception that they won the ACC this year in a down year when Clemson wasn't dominant? But I don't know if Clemson, just had a bad year and they'll be back to being Clemson next year. But at least in Pitt's division in the Coastal, like all the major players like Virginia Tech, Miami, who else? Virginia, they all had to change coaches this season. So Pat Narduzzi, if he can like keep himself together, he could at least dominate that division for the next 2 to 3 years while these other schools try to get it together. And there's even rumors that Miami wants to leave the ACC. I don't know what Miami's thinking, like why they would get more money in the SEC, and I don't know why the SEC would want Miami. It's a very small draw. Like I bet there's more Florida fans in Miami than there is Miami fan, University of Florida. So I don't know what's going on with Miami besides, they're overestimating their pool and draw. I just think like just between, obviously the Pirates are in a heap of trouble, and I don't think the Pirates are going to be very good in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think the Steelers are going the same way. I think Ben's going to retire. When you don't have the quarterback, it's tough to win a championship, and then it seems like their defense is totally falling apart, and they haven't drafted well the last couple of years. Like all their draft picks really aren't panning out. I mean, unless like Devin Bush and some of those other guys, like, maybe he comes back from his ACL better next year, finally, maybe it just took him a year to get better. I don't know how you win on defense. And what happened to Stephon Tuitt? Did he just does he still alive? Does he exist? Is he just a figment of our imagination? I mean, you just can't win in like their offensive line. I don't know. I don't know how the Steelers rebuild. And the Penguins, like I said, like Crosby's fading. They don't have a goaltender really anymore. Matt Murray got traded. Jarry, I don't think, is the answer. And Malkin seems like he's hurt. Even if they get like Malkin back, like I don't know that like you make a deep run with Tristan Jarry. And that's like in hockey, like not having a goaltender is like not having a quarterback. If you don't have a goaltender, you're not really going to go that far. And you could argue over this. Like, do you think it ended? Like it's going to end this year, or do you think it already ended in 2016, like when the Steelers lost that championship game to the Patriots and everything kind of fell apart like after that? Like you could argue that like this really ended in 2016 and that Pitt ACC championship was just kind of like a one-off in a down year with Clemson, where Pitt got to keep all these extra like 6th-year seniors because of the, COVID. So you could argue that, but I like to extend it to 21 just so we throw some Pitt football, ACC championship stuff in there. And I mean, maybe it's an outlier, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's the era really is over, and we're all just kind of. But I think sometimes we enjoyed it. 2003 to 2016. That's 13 years of dominance either way, or to 2021. If you want to extend it to 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, any thoughts on you think it's over or not over, or when it ended?
I like extending it to 2021 because what Pitt did with the ACC championship. You and I watched that game together, and we were kind of taking it in the final minutes, saying like, "Oh my God, Pitt, for the first time in our lifetime as fans, came through and won something big." So I feel like to me that was almost right up there with Super Bowl 40 or moments like that. I think it is over. It's depressing is that whole description you just gave is. You're right. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is gone soon. Sidney Crosby and Malkin and those guys on the backside of their careers. It's over. I don't know if it's over like 1980s over, right? Where everything just collapses on itself. I don't know if it starts up again sooner than we think. I mean, we can't predict the future. But yeah, I like your positioning of 2003 to 2021. I think that's a good time frame for this era. I think there's so many great moments, so many great players, and so many championships in that era. If all the teams stink for the next 10 years, we as fans were gifted, just like you said about Steve, about those other cities, we as fans were gifted something that most sports fans don't get gifted. So whether it's over or not, we should at least take the time to be grateful.
Yeah, it's always good to appreciate what you have than what you didn't have. And hey, we're not Detroit, right?
There
or
you go.
Cleveland. Thank goodness. Well, that's all for this episode. If you have any thoughts or comments, check us out on Twitter. Well, thank you for tuning in. As usual, give us a good ranking. Word of mouth is always helpful. And we'll see you next time on Pittsburgh Sports Memories.